Hey everybody, welcome back to this live episode of Think Business. Excited to have Mark Kassa on the show today. Shout out to Bobby Efros for introducing us. He sent me a text. Hey John, I've listened to your podcast. Mark would be a great guest. And I'm really excited to interview you, Mark, and talk to you and learn from you. You have such an interesting background. You know, you're in the music business, you're a musician, you're a business person, you're philanthropic, right? It's like all the characteristics that everybody wants. But I want to start with just talking about the power of music. You know, right now as we sit here, it's October 13th. We have all been going through 7-8 months of COVID, and talk a little bit about just the power of music. I talk a lot of times about how to get back to center. I'm a big meditator. You know, how to get back into alignment, things of that nature. But talk about the power of music and how that can help people, especially during times like these.
Yeah, I mean, music has always been. First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And thanks to one of my best friends, Bobby Efros, for referring me.
Yes, thanks to Bobby.
You know, I'm really thankful. I just, music is so powerful because it's very therapeutic. You know, think about how it influences you in everyday life. You know, when you go to the gym, you want music that'll get you hyped up to work out. When you want to wind down, you might listen to some smooth jazz. Sometimes you're just stressed and you want to kick back and just, enjoy something. And it's just, it's one of those things that you can't put a dollar figure on, but it's so important. Just like when you're speaking about meditation and these type of things, it's as important as those because it takes you away. You know, you want to draw yourself away from the everyday craziness of the world and all the fighting on social media and everything. And there's nothing nicer than just kicking back and listening to stuff that you love.
Right. Just get lost in the music. So I may mute you when I talk because there's a little back from when I. There we go. So let's talk. So I want to talk a little about music. We'll get back into that in a little bit. I want to talk about business a little bit because. Your grandfather came here in 1936, started a chain of grocery stores, and then now you and your brothers are running those stores. And so I want to kind of talk about, there's business and then there's business with family. So, so I actually have a lot of clients where I work with a lot of families and sometimes, I worked with my brother. We had an internet company many, many years ago. So talk a little bit about the dynamics of working with your family, and B, how you work with your family, especially during really stressful times that we've had the last couple of months.
Man, I've been so lucky because, listen, anybody who says that they have the perfect relationship with everybody, we all know that's not true. But, overall, my business partners have been great. Everyone's very honest. We're all great in dealing with each other. And do we have disagreements? Absolutely. And sometimes it's just a matter of figuring out when do you go, when you have to back down and go, okay, let's just go with this other plan here. Maybe I don't agree with it, but you know what, let's try it. And you got to be diplomatic about things. Sometimes it's not easy because everyone has their own idea of how to do things and, different ways to lead. But, overall, we've been in business together now for, over 3 decades, and we've had our ups and downs, but, mostly all good stuff because we know in the end of the day, no matter what you agree or disagree on, as long as you can trust each other and you can rely on each other, there's been times where individuals, we've gone through particular, whether it be an illness or whatever, and all other partners step right up to the plate for everything. And that's what's so important. The basics are in line. Everybody really backs each other up on the important things in life.
Yeah. But your business is almost 100 years old, right? I mean, since its inception. And so talk a little bit about how you carry a brand, a culture. It's not this. There's nothing easy about that. Especially when you're passing businesses through generation to generation. What are some of the core things, the core values that you really kind of stuck to so you could continue your growth as a business?
I think the biggest thing is just operating with honesty and taking care of your customer as if you're taking care of, your mom or your dad or anybody else. We've always been, we're lucky enough. My dad was an incredible person and we've always learned the right way. For example, we were in a store that was in a very low income area in Detroit. And if somebody was shoplifting, my dad would stop them and see what they had. And if they were stealing like the basics, he's like, hey, what's going on here? And they say, you know what, I got kids, I'm hungry. Next thing you know, my dad would send them out the store with a whole shopping cart full of groceries, and they'd be in tears walking out the door. Yeah. And that's who we learned from. My dad was always like that. We never cut corners. I'd rather the consumer be happy, because there's a moral responsibility with things. You're not only serving, it's not that you're just running a business.
Yeah.
You're feeding people. So it's so important that you have a moral responsibility. You're feeding children, you're feeding families, to make sure that the freshest product is out there, that you're taking care of your customers, with a conscience. And I never forget my nephew, when he went to Wayne State, one of the best things I ever heard, he was in a business class at Wayne State, and his professor was talking about business and ethics. And she said, business people don't have to be ethical, but there are ones that are. And she described a store in Detroit that she used to come to and talked about how ethical everybody was. And it was our store, K&G Food Mart on Linwood and Davis. And my nephew stood up and said, hey, it's my grandfather's store. And it was just like, when he came home and told us, we were like, I was almost just, I don't know, I was just so happy, almost in tears hearing that's how we're viewed in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I love that story. My father was a dentist, and I was at a client's office once, and someone there was telling a story about an experience that they had. They were talking about the type of experience that you should have when you're working with a client. And this person was sharing a story about basically their dentist and this and the other, but they didn't know that was my dad. And so they were explaining the story. I mean, so I've been in that scenario, and it's a pretty special moment.
Yeah, when it's an unsolicited comment like that, it's beautiful,
Yeah, no, it's great. I love just hearing the stories about your dad. So I want to just kind of dive into a little bit about the moral responsibility, because I think, I think that what we've all been going through these last 7 months, that's been highlighted a lot. We see it in small companies, medium-sized companies, large-sized companies, people just getting kind of back into alignment with what those moral responsibilities are, back to core values, back to, personal values, all of that. And so when you learn things like your dad did, I love that story about the person who was shoplifting. What are some of the other moral responsibilities that you just learned, growing up from your grandfather and your dad?
I mean, a lot of it is just giving back to the community. It's so important. I love working. I've worked with so many different organizations. Like one great one is Danny's Miracle Angel Network, which I'm a board member of. Yeah. And we just, to me, all these small things giving back to the community, helping. We do a turkey drive every year. We've been able to put, 2,000 turkeys on the table for people for their family in the last 4 years. I've worked with St. Dominic's Soup Kitchen downtown, recently with the Sheffield's Food Pantry. I mean, giving back and having, trying to be ethical in business. It's not just about the accumulation of money. There's a lot more to life than that. I mean, yeah, does everyone want to make money? Absolutely. You're not in business not to make money, but you also have to give back and show your care for the community and the people that surround you.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about right now, Mark, because you're talking about just the soul of business, right? The soul of giving back and the essence of, treating people with dignity and respect. And I think that's so important. And it was interesting. I interviewed a guy yesterday who wrote a book called The 5% Zone. And one of the things he talked about was culture, and that culture needs to be talked about within the company every single day, so you can really keep on harnessing and evolving and growing the culture. And so when you have a company like yours, you have 4 grocery stores, you have a lot of employees, you have frontline workers also, so thank you very much. I mean, essential business, absolutely. How do you continue to inspire them, nurture them, encourage them, and also kind of keep the culture of the business, on a daily basis?
I really think it kind of happens by osmosis, by your example. If they see that you're treating everybody with respect and with dignity, and whether it's the young kid that's a bagger in the store or whoever it is, that you treat everybody with with dignity. They feel that, and they feel if you're acting morally, and they see you working with different organizations, you're just acting in a good manner, and you treat them well. You're not trying to do anything shady, and they feel, people can feel that from a person. They can feel whether you're genuine or not, and I think that's really the gist of it. It's not really complicated. Just do your thing on an everyday basis, and do it with a good spirit behind it, and it'll come back to you. People can feel it.
Yeah, it comes back to my beautiful. Be responsible for the energy you bring in the room.
Yep.
Yeah, and as a leader, that really, really is important. And I love what you're highlighting, which is, 95% of everything that a culture is how the owners and the leaders walk. Right. That's the pulse of the culture. I love what you're talking about, and I love the lineage that goes back. How you talk about your dad and your grandfather. Those are special stories. I want to talk a little bit about music now, and I love kind of your backdrop and everything that you have behind you. And everybody, I think most everybody who's watched the show is watching right now, or will watch in the future, has watched the Grammys and has heard the line, the Grammy goes to. And so I've never met anybody who actually is a voting member of the Grammy Awards. And so like, A, how do you get that? And B, what type of experience is that?
It's been great. It was kind of interesting. I never really thought about applying to the Recording Academy. Then about 5 years ago, I'm like, what the heck, nothing to lose. I figure there was 3 tiers of membership. There's like the first tier, I forgot what the first tier is called, and the second tier, and then the top tier is becoming a voting member. And there's only like worldwide about 10,000 people that can vote and nominate for the Grammys. So the criteria is that you have to have at least, I believe it's like a dozen songs released globally that are for sale with you as the writer on the credits, scanned in on the songs. You have to be working with people that are current in the music industry. And then there's a bunch of other criteria, and then they take about 2-3 weeks to vet you out. And next thing I knew, I got back to thing. This is voting member. So I was surprised too, but I guess it worked out good because at the time I had just finished recording and producing with George Clinton. I've got him on my albums and on my album and on some videos, and George's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Funk Hall of Fame. And I recorded with Andy Vargas, lead singer from Santana, and Billy Cox from Hendrix's band, and Dennis Coffey from the Funk Brothers. And at that year happened to be a year they were really doing a huge honor to George at the Grammy Awards. So I think that helped me out tremendously. I don't think I've ever, it's funny, when I go to LA for the Grammys every year, I don't think I've seen a more respected musician and known person in the music industry like George Clinton. When you mention the same people, it's like, it's incredible the respect they have for him. And he was just a great guy to work with.
I love it. Well, congratulations. That's very cool, very exciting. But I want to talk about music for a minute, because I think music can teach us a lot of lessons about just business in the way that a song tells a story. And there's nothing better in business than being able to tell a story. I think people learn best from stories and lessons. And so, in a song, you're telling a story in 2 to 3.5 minutes. So talk a little bit about how you write a song, right? Because you got to tell a lot in just a little bit of time. So how do you storytell and write a song?
Well, one thing first you touched on a second ago is how business and music go together. The good part about how music has helped me in business is the right brain, left brain thing. One side is very organized and one side is creative. Using the creative side helps you in the business world too. And then music wise, it's such a blast writing. I love writing music. It's funny because believe it or not, there's a lot of actual songwriters. A lot of the people you see on TV actually have songwriters, but I'm one of the guys that writes and produces and everything from A to Z. And it's great because you're putting together your lyrics, you're telling your story, or you're making some type of statement. And like you said, in a very short amount of time. And you know what? Sometimes the audience isn't going to get it, but they don't need to.
Right.
Leave it to their imagination. I forgot which, maybe it was Freddie Mercury that once said, somebody asked him, well, is this what this means in these lyrics? Is this what the lyrics mean? He said, well, is that what you think it means? They said, yeah. He goes, okay, then that's what it means. Like he just kind of leave it to your imagination. So it's kind of nice leaving that gamut wide open,
right? So a lot of interpretation. But I am curious at the process, and the reason I want to dive into it a little bit is because it's like when in business when you're giving a presentation or you're putting together a proposal or any type of pitch or communicating, you gotta, like, if you're presenting a proposal, you gotta be able to wrap it up, be succinct, right? The higher you go in an organization, if you're in an organization, the less time you have to get your point across. So when writing a song, you have to be able to tell a year story in 3 lines, right? And so what is that process like?
Well, first you want to come up with the first thing before you even tell that story, you got to have a hook. So you got to have that, you got to come up with a strong hook so that when you tell the story, the lyrics mean something when that hook hits you. And the hook is obviously that repetitive part that sticks in your brain that you hopefully go away whistling or humming when you leave.
Right.
But it's just a matter of, like, it's kind of like refining yourself, like kind of like poetry, right? Like they can't tell a whole story and, they can't tell a 10-year story and they have to cut it down to like 20 lines of text or script. So it's kind of the same thing. You kind of whittle it down to what's important and how long the listener can grab onto those lyrics. And, because if it goes on too long, it's kind of like a text message, right? Somebody sends you a 50-line text, you're like, skip. Yeah. Kind of the same thing with music. You try and make it to the point. Hopefully they can grab onto it. Sometimes they can't, but you try and make a strong hook. And most of the time the listener can grab the story, though. They can make out what's going on.
Right. But I like what you're saying is you always need a hook, right? You always got to, whether it's, one of my favorite Stephen Coveyisms is, start with the end in mind. You got to know where you got to take somebody. So, no, I love what you're talking about there. I think we're in a time right now, as we record this, it's October 13, 2020, and the world changed in March with COVID. And a lot of kids graduated college and in a world that they thought is completely different than they thought it would be. Mm-hmm. And so I want you to talk to them for a minute as far as how you found your passion in music, right? Because I think a lot of these young adults are trying to figure out where their passion is or what their purpose is or, what their next step should be. And so for someone who is so passionate about music, you've been in the music industry for so long, you went to school for it. My first question is A, when did you first know that you had this passion for music that you could actually turn into a job or a career or and make money off of it? And 2, what would you recommend to young adults today, or really for that matter, anybody, on how to find their passion?
I mean, it just kind of hits you. It used to be interesting. I was working a ton of hours at the store. We've all been working since we were little kids. And then I stopped in at Wonderland Music on Northwestern Highway.
Oh my God. I remember Wonderland. Not many people will remember that. Yeah. So
I stopped in and I just pop in there and I'd see people playing guitar, playing like a power chord in the guitar. And I was just like mesmerized, right, by stuff. And then I went and picked up like a really cheap amp and a really cheap guitar. And, my mom and dad like, oh, here he goes. He's going to, this will be sitting, he'll quit. Next thing you know, I stopped going out on weekends. I'd fall asleep practicing guitar. I'd have a day off and practice for 10, 12, 13 hours in a day. And then I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan at Meadowbrook. And I'll never forget, my buddies came over and they put the record on of Couldn't Stand the Weather. And we're sitting around listening, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's incredible, man!" And then he had his version of Voodoo Child on that album from Hendrix, and we just blew us away. And he's like, "Well, he's playing at Meadowbrook. You want to go see him?" I said, "Yeah, let's go." We go down there. It's pouring, rain, and we're in the lawn. It's raining, and James Cotton Blues Band open up, and I'm like, "Man, this guy better be good." We're sitting out here in the lawn, and he just came out and tore it up. And from that moment, I was like, "That's what I got really serious about guitar."
In the zone.
And then I went to Wayne State for 2.5 years, and I used to carry around all my guitar magazines in my book bag all the time and I had a 3.73 grade point at Wayne State. I did real well, but I wanted to go to music school. Remember, this is before the internet and everything. And then 1990, I finally pulled the trigger and went to Musicians Institute in Hollywood. Real well with all the family members because everyone's in business, all my cousins and stuff. But I'm like, I'm going. So I went to Hollywood and ended up graduating from Musicians Institute. And it was such a great experience because all the great musicians that were off the road would stop in and we got to jam with them. Like I got to jam with Prince's Rhythm Section, with The Time, with Sheila E's band, with all these incredible players. And it was a one-of-a-kind experience. Half the kids were from outside the U.S. And then, of course, you're in Hollywood, the craziest place in the world on top of it, you know. And from there, it just took off. I've had, 9 albums written now, and I've been, like I said, we go to Grammys every year. And it's just keeping your nose to the grindstone and doing, when you feel it and it's what you love, and you just keep your nose to the grindstone no matter what anybody says.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about. Can you talk for a second about just the courage it took? Because I think a lot of times people sometimes don't go against the grain, right? So their family's in business, and all of a sudden you're going to Hollywood for school. Just the courage that you had to tap into to actually make the decision and actually go.
Yeah, it was quite a decision. I, especially in the Chaldean community, it's all about business, right? So it's like, you got to be a businessman or, professional doctor, lawyer, this, that. So, when I told my parents I want to go to music school in Hollywood, they were like, what? And then all my relatives started chiming in, he's going to be crazy. He's going to go out there and go nuts and this and that and everything. And finally I talked to him. I'm like, Mom, have I ever been in trouble before? She said, no. I said, well, what do you think? I'm not going to be in trouble now. This is like, this is where I want to go to school. So they figured out after that, they got behind me.
Yeah.
And then when I got to school, it was so much work. It was 60 hours a week in school. Actually, really more like 70 or 80 because we had 60 hours that we were between classes and clinics and seminars and playing live. And then at night, special guests would come in and we'd go to concerts. And it was exactly what I wanted. 24/7 music. But like I said, my relatives were thinking, this guy, he's gone crazy and this and that. And what's he going to be, a starving musician and blah, blah, blah. But
yeah. Now they're bragging about you. Now you're a member of the voting academy for the Grammy. So well, I love your story, Mark. I think it's great. The being able to use both sides of your brain, like you're talking about. The creative and the art side, the science side, and mix them together in both businesses, with the grocery business, with your family, with the music business, the courage to kind of follow your dreams. I think it's great. A couple speed round questions. You ready?
I want to tell you one thing real quick, how I ended up influencing somebody else. So my nephew decided about 7 years ago, he was trying to become a professional gamer. Video games, how they're so huge right now. So he was home, not making any money doing it. He's playing games all day long. And this kid was always super smart and super aggressive. He's my godson, he's just a great kid. So he quit. He had a great grade point in college, only had like less than a year left to graduate, and he quit to play games. So obviously his parents were distraught, my brother and my sister-in-law, my mom, his grandmother. They told me, can you talk to him? I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. But I didn't say what they wanted me to say. So we sat down and I said, George, I got to ask you a question. I said, how bad do you want this?
Yeah.
So this is really what I have a passion for, Uncle Mark. I said, okay, this is your time to go for it.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? Go all in. If you fail, big deal. You have no responsibility right now. You don't have a business. You don't have a house payment. You don't have nothing. If you fail, you go back and finish college. Now he's one of the top gamers in the world. He's making 20 times what I make running a grocery store. And he's super successful. And now they're all behind him. They all watch his live stream. Right. I go, yeah. I said, see, you guys didn't. I'm the one who told him to go for it.
I would love to have the two of you on the show and talk about mentorship, because those defining moments and those defining conversations are so critical. And I love the whole storyline of that, and I would love to have you both on the show as soon as you're ready and talk about, because mentorship and guidance and advice, because you can give advice, but then somebody's actually got to take it. And you got to be able to give it so you can talk to their heart, which it sounds like you did. So kudos to you. You should be getting minimum 20%.
I went so everyone thought I was going to tell them, stay in school. You only got. I'm like, no, man, this is the time. If you got a passion, if it's here, you got to go for it.
Yeah, I'm the same way when people ask me to talk to people. Like I tell them, I'm going to tell them what I want to tell them. I'm not. Yeah, so I love that. Mark Deary.
Matt Derry?
Matt Derry.
Oh, that's the best guy, man. Nicest guy. He was Matt.
Right here. One of the best people you know. And
man.
Great. I'm so glad that we got connected, because you just seem like a great person. Wait, couple quick questions. You ready? Quick speed round. All right. Favorite, your all-time favorite song.
All-time favorite song, probably Voodoo Child from Jimi Hendrix.
Okay. All right. Your second.
My license plate's J Hendrix.
Okay. That's a great one. The best piece of advice your dad ever gave you.
You know, he never directly gave me like advice, but his actions spoke. He's my biggest mentor ever. While he was working so many hours in the grocery store, he decided he wanted to learn how to fly a plane. So he went. He was a pilot for like 30 years. He wanted to get a black belt. He went for that. He always was learning. He was 65 years old, learned how to use Microsoft. I mean, who wants to learn this stuff at 65? Microsoft Excel and Word. Documentation we use at the store till this day he made. So he was my mentor as far as, he didn't give me advice, but the way he lived was what I was. By osmosis is how I learned.
Yeah, I love it. And the last question is, and this is kind of in alignment with the advice you gave your godson and some of the other things that you said, but to the kids, to the young adults who are graduating college today, to the people who have been laid off, who've had an idea for the last 5, 10, 15 years, what is your advice to them as a business person, entrepreneur, as far as how to take that next step, no differently than the courage it took you to go to Hollywood?
Never quit. My biggest thing is never, ever, ever quit. There's an old saying that says, don't let success get your head. Don't let failure get to your heart. Don't get a big head if you have a little success, and don't get down if you don't do well. And nobody can tell you that you won't be successful. For example, Santana, when they went for their first record deal, 2 record labels came there to scout on them. The first one said, there's no chance you'll ever make it. You guys will never amount to anything. Nobody ever listened to this kind of music. The second label saw something special. And after that, whose name is bigger than Carlos Santana worldwide? And they dug it into that guy. I forgot which record label he was the head of. For years, they dug it into him that he told them they'll never amount to anything and blah, blah, blah. Nobody likes this music. The point being, nobody can tell you how to be, nobody can tell you you're not going to be a success. You will. And another thing people don't talk about, just being a good person and being personable, networking and being personable and knowing how to talk to people will get you very, very far. Most people get promotions or a job or whatever it may be just based on the fact that they like you as a human being. Being a respectful person will get you. Your skill level may not be quite as high as somebody else, but your level of dedication, persistence, and just being genuine will get you far.
Yeah, I love it. Mark, you're great. Thank you, Bobby Efros, for introducing us. This was great. I loved having you on the show. I love learning.
You're an incredible guy, Bobby Efros, man. One of the nicest guys ever. Just a great guy. And Bobby, thanks for referring me, and thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
That was great. I love interviewing people who just have huge hearts and just give a lot. So thank you so much for taking time. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, find your music, your grocery stores, all that other good stuff.
Sure. The grocery stores, there's a Heartland Marketplace in Farmington Hills, a Heartland Marketplace in Westland, Saturn Marketplace in Dearborn Heights, and Saturn Foods in Detroit. On the music side, you can go to SlightReturn.com. Slight Return is my band. And welcome to the D.com for my apparel. This kind of stuff here. I own the trademarks on the D and welcome to the D and all this stuff. And in fact, I was promoting Detroit in 1990 when I was in LA. When everyone hated Detroit, I had my Bill Laimbeer jersey. We used to drive me insane because we just beat the Lakers that year, 89. And then I had my Bob Prover jersey wear on stage, and it used to drive them nuts. But always been a huge promoter of Detroit.
Good. Awesome. Mark, thanks, man. I appreciate it. You've been a great guest and mentor to me. I learned a ton today. I love interviewing people, and I love learning from people, and you taught me a lot, and as did your dad through his story, through his story. So I thank him as well. Thanks, man, for being on the show. And that's it. Anything, take us home. Last thing you want to say?
All I want to say is I'm very grateful to have always been surrounded by great people, my wife, my kids, great family, my mom, dad, everybody. I'm very, very lucky in that respect, and I don't take it for granted. So
Good. Gratitude is key. All right, man. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you very much.
You have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.